Hello and welcome back to Raised Gaming and more Wilds Talk. Today we're back for a new set of things you might know about, useful, weird or interesting details, but this time we have a couple bigger, wider topics. So let's just get into it. We begin with a larger conversation around one specific character though, and her link to a pretty incredible monster. It's of course the Diva and Fatalis, which has been this ongoing topic of debate on Reddit and socials in general. But why are people comparing the Diva to Fatalis? There are actually a few interesting connections to at least consider. And a main topic for this actually comes from a reveal by a Reddit user, Huckleberry6814. If you aren't aware, the Diva never actually opens her eyes at any point. So while we're watching her performance at night, throughout the song, her eyes are hidden. Some details about her character can be weaned, since say her clothing is slightly see-through, we can see from her legs and feet that she's indeed a wyverian. They have these bird-like legs, where they stand on their toes. We've seen many examples of that throughout Monster Hunter, so it's not exactly a big surprise for this character, but just a detail. But one detail we simply don't get to see though, is her eyes. Or, in fact, this character ever outside of the performance. Like when she finishes that performance, dawn hits and the sun perfectly blinds us all like a flashbang, which covers her exit of the stage, mysteriously empty after her departure. That's a funny detail about the hub we've probably all experienced by now, that insanely bright light. But that mechanic right there seems to purely be about her exit and hiding that, so it leaves some mystery to her. Anyway, her eyes. Thanks to that Reddit post by Huckleberry, we do get to see them. They use some kind of free camera to fly into her face and take a look. These images do show the eyes with gamma rays, so we can actually take a look at them. So we need to be careful with how we look at the color of them. It might mean the colors in general are a bit off. The whole thing looks quite red though, but for the eye color, it might be the case that it's more like gray than truly white, but I would definitely consider these white looking at them. There's 3 images which show the eyes at night, and then as it turns to dawn, you can really see the white on that final image. But why does any of that matter? Well, for one, it suggests that with this huge amount of detail on the eyes that are currently completely hidden at the moment, they're going to reveal them at some point. Maybe for a key story moment, you would imagine. Just as Huckleberry suggests in their post though, my mind also went straight to 2 characters with important eyes and some eye color changes that occur, linked to monsters. We're talking about Hanoa and Minoto, important characters during the story of Rise. Those 2 had a strange connection with some of the main monsters of Rise, Nawa and Ibushi. During the story, there's this ongoing connection with the feeling of these monsters and basically translating that as they desperately try to reach each other and ultimately bring destruction. Somehow, these 2 characters are able to translate those feelings during kind of trance speech, and at the end of the 1.0 ending, which is basically just a teaser for the eventual ending, as Hanoa and Minoto chant together with these glowing eyes, one with the bright yellow of Nawa, the other with the bright blue of Ibushi. Suddenly though, they end this trance and their eyes return to normal, but they do herald the coming of All-Mother Nawa and her potential offspring at that point. So here's the Diva in Wilds with these bright white eyes, the white outfit, and the song that she's singing. How does that link to Fatalis? Well, there's this big theory around that the Diva might be connected somehow to White Fatalis, also known as Old Fatalis specifically. To quickly reference the confusing naming, Josh explained to me that some translation issues caused a few different names for one version of Fatalis. So while I will refer to him as White Fatalis a lot because it's relevant to the eye topic, in the 20th anniversary monster popularity poll, they last officially referred to White Fatalis as Old Fatalis. So either way, whether you refer to this one as white or old, it's the same one. Let's dive into the topic. The point is, what if her white eyes will herald the coming of White Fatalis, like the blue and orange of Hanoa and Minoto, and Ibushi and Nawa? I was first made aware of this Fatalis Diva theory though when there was a popular post on Reddit that I found a bit far-fetched at first, the idea that the Diva after the performance takes this specific sitting pose while waiting in the dark for the player to officially let her song end. You can actually hold that final position for ages if you want, but when you do finally stop watching, the dawn explosion occurs and the Diva disappears. Anyway, she sits like this with her head down and her arms lifted just over her shoulders, with the hands actually pointing downward in a very specific pose. Comparisons absolutely can be made between Shia and Fatalis for not just their movesets, their lore, the very creation of Shia being linked to Fatalis, but also when Shia sits, it's just like Fatalis. They're obviously connected. But the Diva absolutely is sitting in a strange position here to end the song, and it's probably intentionally done. But is it really just like the Fatalis and Shia sit? Maybe that's more debatable, but there could be something there. Then we have this great post by Motoika. Shia doesn't just use Fatalis attacks, but specifically also red lightning, which can be tied directly to white Fatalis as a signature trait. Key returning characters tied to white Fatalis have actually returned in Wilds. The legend, which has all connections to that monster as well. The Diva herself is all in white, sitting in that position that might be like Zoe and Fatalis. And as Motoika pointed out in their post, the quest tied to white Fatalis was named A White Beam of Light, given to you, in fact, by a girl dressed in white. And with the Diva's white eyes, which, going by Hanoa and Minato in Rise, may very well reflect white Fatalis in some future scene where they reveal those eyes. Basically, it does seem very possible that we could see a return of Fatalis in Wilds, and kind of like how we had Valstrax coming back in Rise, but as a specific new version, the Crimson Glow version, maybe we won't get normal Fatalis, but specifically the white or old version. That'd be cool. Why? I couldn't say for sure right now. Maybe it could be related to Shia and, the connections there. Maybe mistakenly drawn by that. Could be an interesting theory. But it's all worth considering and interesting to think about. Fatalis was my favorite monster to hunt in World, and Shia has scratched that itch a little bit for sure, but the real thing, that'd be great. There is one more topic I want to reference for the Diva in this video though, and it's actually about her song. The lyrics of it. It seems like she's singing Wyverian or some sort of not exactly real language that we can translate, but people have transcribed what she's actually singing. Using that transcription though, I saw people try to translate that into some sort of logical sense, and this was the best version of a translation that I found, and I quite like it. It could be, as she's singing, she's saying this: "The wind carries thoughts and life, may the prayers be heard. Can you hear it, this longing? With gratitude for the days of the past, to the lives that have protected us. O light that watches over from afar, may our wishes ride upon the wind. That the path to the future will be illuminated, may your journey through life be guided. Our wishes rise to the sky, to the farthest reaches of the stars. The wind carries our prayers far away. Thank you for this world. To the star that guides us we offer our wishes, our prayers still turn into song, resonating with kindness, bringing forth new hope. May it always reach your heart." That feels quite reasonable to me, based on the relevance of the song and the idea that it's a prayer through song. But honestly, who is to say with made up languages and all of that? So what do you think? Will white Fatalis make a return in Wilds? And will the key to that, in fact, be this mysterious Diva? Moving on from those larger topics then, let's get through a couple quicker ones. Like for example, did you realize you can sneak attack Shia? Yeah, I think it's lost on a lot of people because you run into this arena with Zoe basically looking at you. So a lot of speedruns have been dismounting and aerial attacking to start, but now we're seeing more and more of the openings of these top runs actually using sneak attacks. That's of course because it's still a big burst of damage, but for various weapons, it can be an incredible tool. Like weapons such as Switch Axe, it will literally activate Power Axe mode for free, which is pretty damn nice for the opener of a fight. The only rule to be able to do this is pretty simple. As you're going to the edge of the cliff where you jump down into the arena of Shia, just stop and sort of press to the left. This way you'll land behind Shia ever so slightly, which means it won't see you. Then you can just run up and sneak attack it. It's that easy. On another note tied to that, are you aware that there's special aerial sneak attack animations? If you sneak attack from a higher up vantage, you get a unique aerial sneak attack animation, one per weapon in fact, that plays out from this perspective. Cotton had gathered a few examples of this recently, so I can share that in this video. You can see how with the SNS example, he stands on a ledge just barely above this Nerzilla to set all of this up, and that causes essentially a mini perfect rush leap up into the air, slamming down with the shield in this case. For Charge Blade, it's a raised slam of the sword, but hilariously in this case he hit a bunch of hatchlings, which gave him all that extra vile build up. And for Insect Glaive, we see a big flipping spin, very familiar for this weapon's aerial moveset. So pretty cool, some unique sneak attack animations. Go check out what yours might be. Next, just a neat detail I hadn't realized in regards to the Guardians. They're able to generate these little Wilk fulgurite crystals during their fights, which as we know can be exploded with their own element for extra damage, making them even more dangerous. But we also know we can interrupt those by popping them ourselves with our own element, triggering that element as an explosion for our damage, and it can even be done with elemental pods. But this topic is all thanks to a commenter from the series, someone called Takaris, which I hope I pronounced that right, who highlighted the fact that Guardians can only actually create those explosive crystals if you're currently fighting in a Wilk pool. That naturally will happen in Guardian hunts though, because they do draw you to them. They go to recharge like a forced event to be in a pool for those mechanics. But with Shia technically being a Guardian too, it's interesting that Zoe doesn't need Wilk pools to do that. Not only can it create crystals, but massive ones with ease. Now that could be because it's powered up from all the Wilk absorption as part of the kit of the monster. Or maybe the whole arena we're fighting Zoe in counts as a Wilk pool. I mean, we are at the heart of it all anyway. Makes me wonder, if we could draw Zoe away from that area and fight somewhere else, would it actually have access to Wilk related powers at all? I guess we'll never know. Something I talked about as well in a recent Things episode was the fact that gore magala shows up in Wyvria. It's interesting, but how will it affect things in regards to the frenzy and the guardians there? I asked, does this mean we could potentially see frenzied guardians in the future? Or instead, will we get an update to guardians and frenzied monsters in some sort of title update like 2 or 3, where we have guardians versus the frenzied as a cool theme? It was Gunless Snake that talked about this in the comments, talking about the fact that the Dragon Torch has been cured of the frenzy virus infection during the high rank story, right? And so it began to form some sort of immunity to it. But if you think about it, it's spreading out the Wilk, right? That power that the Guardians are basically existing from. They go and absorb it. So if they're absorbing the new immunity to the frenzy virus, then that would make these Guardians immune. We already knew that for some reason arkveld was immune to the frenzy virus. So it's fair to assume that the other Guardians could generate that resistance to it. And at this point in the story, probably have. So it could be a way for them to do something more interesting in the future with the frenzied monsters, with the Guardian monsters, since they're all tier 2 and not too threatening right now. And I want to see them do more with it in the future, so here's hoping. On the note of gore magala, there was also an interesting comment from someone called Ghost Avenger, who referenced the fact that gore magala has a classification now. Instead of being 3 question marks as usual, it's now officially a demi-elder if you hadn't realized. Yeah, if you look inside at the information, the hunter notes, it's the first time we have this classification. So we don't have elder dragons in wilds, but we do have a demi-elder. But technically with that, there's 3 new classifications of monsters in wilds. So obviously you have demi-elders, which is just gore for now, but then we have the incredible new udra and Zuwu as the cephalopod types. And then also we have the guardians themselves, which are officially known as the construct monster class. Really cool naming. So they've introduced quite a lot of new stuff in wilds, but I just want to see them do more with it. I've been saying that Zuwu is one of my favorite monsters in the series overall, and I want to see them do something like a deviant or subspecies or whatever. I want to see more of those monsters. Lastly, for a really cool topic though, I want to highlight this awesome cinematic comparison. Monster Hunter Generations and Generations Ultimate featured a character that progressed with the hammer. So it was this hammer user that was tackling some monsters in this cinematic way for the cinematics of both Generations and Generations Ultimate. In Ultimate though, it progressed into an experienced team where they're working together, but the hammer user takes a forefront of those cinematics, kind of offsetting different attacks. But was that hammer user literally Olivia, or is it just some cool comparable moments that they did in wilds? This was brought up by this person on Twitter, Nanaki, in which they compared a few specific shots of the hammer user in Generations to Olivia in those cinematic moments actually in wilds. In particular, those moments of offset, interrupt of duna, where you can see the same thing with Barioth or glaive, depending on the cinematic that you're looking at. The exact shots are super similar though, to the point where it definitely doesn't feel like an accident. In fact, I'm even more convinced it's intentional when you consider the new clash mechanic in wilds and the cinematic inspiration behind that. But is that character actually Olivia? Or just one character that shows up in Generations and Ultimate, and then Olivia in Wilds is separate? Now, it wouldn't be the first time an older gen character returns in Wilds, right? We literally have Gemma, the Legend, and Fabius, and so on already. And it would be a really cool detail that that's the character that's progressed and kind of would line up with her age. So what do you guys think? Is that Olivia, or just some cool shots they reworked into Wilds? But for now, that actually brings us to the end of the video. Let me know what you think of all the topics today, like if you think White, aka Old Fatalis, is his link to the Diva real. But as well as that, if you have anything you'd like to suggest for future Things episodes, please let us know in the comments. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.